I think we're going to see 1 million this year. Bitcoin price has been suppressed for a very long time. We should have hit these levels at maybe 100K a few years ago. But if you look at the amount of fraud that was perpetrated by FTX and other companies, that's really what stole the 100K from Bitcoin in 2021. We should have been there, but they stole that. Our thesis is that we are going to this hyper-Bitcoinized state. That's the final step. But in between, there has to be a transition from the fiat system into this new system.
Right.
And I don't believe a lot of countries are well prepared. And I also believe this transition is going to happen very rapidly. It's not a matter of decades out. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
Many consider Samson Mou's $1 million prediction for Bitcoin controversial and unrealistic. Critics have pointed out that global macro conditions and rising geopolitical tensions make Mao's predictions particularly unfeasible. Yet the Gen 3 chief executive officer argues that these exact factors will propel Bitcoin's prices straight to $1 million when the time comes. According to Mao, all we need for reasonably higher Bitcoin prices is a tiny crack in the system. This crack will show the world's over 8 billion population that the current monetary system is not only skewed, it's completely rigged to fail. Mao believes this crack will begin in the U.S. bond market, which was once thought to be the world's safest financial market, but is now showing more signs of volatility than several other asset classes. Mao paints a vivid picture of the potential crisis that could unfold if investors lose faith in the U.S. government's ability to manage its massive debt. He envisions a rapid unraveling of the entire monetary system, with everyone scrambling for a solution. In a recent discussion with podcaster and journalist Efrat Phoenix, and Mao delved into the concept of hyper-Bitcoin ideation, the possibility of sovereign adoption of Bitcoin, and his $1 million Bitcoin prediction.
I believe hyper-Bitcoinization is an inevitability, and we are just speeding it up a little bit by trying to get the nation states on board. Gen 3, we work with governments, work with politicians, regulators, central banks too, if they're open to discussions. We're engaging with them to help them implement a Bitcoin strategy, because our thesis is that we are going to this hyper-Bitcoinized state. That's the final step. But in between, there has to be a transition from the fiat system into this new system. And I don't believe a lot of countries are well prepared. And I also believe this transition is going to happen very rapidly. It's not a matter of decades out. It's probably within the next 5 to 10 years.
Really?
Yes. And that means a lot of places are ill-prepared for this transition. And being unprepared for that transition means that a lot of people will suffer. Similar to demonetization events in the past. If you look at India in 2016, they pulled some currencies out of circulation, and a lot of people died. About a dozen people died during this very tumultuous demonetization event. And it's just removing a few bills of circulation, but people were lining up at the bank. Some were dying of exposure. Some were not able to pay medical bills because they had the old bills, and the hospital wouldn't take the old ones because they're worried that it's going to be worthless. But if you take that and extrapolate that to the whole world, we have about 8 billion people that need to onboard into Bitcoin still. And we're nowhere prepared to do that. El Salvador is decently prepared. They have their national wallet. They have some education programs. They're teaching people in schools. And they have Bitcoin law. But other places are not prepared. So what we hope to do is facilitate that and get some form of Bitcoin adoption now so that they have a few years' time to gracefully move into Bitcoin as a parallel track to the fiat track and be ready for that point at which fiat dies.
For Mao, getting countries and nation states to adopt Bitcoin is a matter of freedom and restoring balance in the world. As a Canadian, the Gen 3 CEO cites the example of the Canadian government's overreach during the Freedom Convoy protests. In 2022, the Justin Trudeau-led government declared the Emergencies Act an extraordinary piece of federal legislation, granting itself additional powers with which it then proceeded to abuse citizens' rights. Not only were the protesters forcefully and physically removed from the protesting grounds, but people who donated to their cause were also demonized and continuously harassed by the government. The banks also readily helped freeze the personal accounts of the organizers, cutting them off banking services without any authorization from the courts. It really does not get more diabolic. Mao warns that many other governments will resort to such tyrannical activities. When the great fiat Ponzi begins to collapse, they will do everything to stop the people from taking control, including seizing all properties and assets within the system. Here are more clips from the interview.
I think at the end of the day, governments are still made up of people. And you can have bad governments because there are bad people, weak people in the government, like Trudeau. And there's plenty of examples of this. But you can also have good people in the government that want good things for their constituents. But the Bitcoin adoption aspect is critical, I believe. And this is why a lot of us are galvanized around Jan 3 in our mission, because we can see Bitcoin changing the government, changing the relation between the state and a citizen of the state, whereby you're not just a tax slave anymore, but you're someone that has to be respected and listened to, because now they can't just take your stuff, right? You can't print money anymore. Like, inflation is basically hidden money printing. People don't realize it, but you can print money explicitly or implicitly through inflation.
Yep.
You can tax people explicitly or tax people secretly through inflation.
Yep.
And with Bitcoin, you can't do that anymore.
In other news, Galaxy Digital CEO Mike Novogratz has given 3 factors he believes could push Bitcoin to new all-time highs in 2024. The factors include a Fed rate cut and a big regulatory breakthrough. During a recent interview published on Galaxy's YouTube channel, Novogratz said, "There's a resurgence of the 'oh my God, the economy slowing down' narrative, which will be helpful. I don't think Bitcoin will take out the old $73,000 high unless we get the Fed in action or get some regulatory breakthrough. I do believe the next move is up because I think we're going to get closer to the election, and Powell is going to want to cut rates." Another bullish factor, according to the Galaxy Digital CEO, is the amount of U.S. federal government spending and mounting debt, which he believes will lead more people to invest in Bitcoin as digital gold. Novogratz said, "Having really crappy policymakers and profligate spenders and populists in Washington is great for my net worth. That's just the story of Bitcoin. Bitcoin is going up for the same reason gold is going up. It's going up faster because we're a newer technology. We are a newer commodity, and therefore the adoption cycle is happening faster." Please share your thoughts on Mao's $1 million Bitcoin prediction and Novogratz his comments.